Jordan, we are ready on this side when 11:30 hits.
Great. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you.
Okay, good morning, everyone. We can go ahead and get started. I'll call the Administration and Finance Committee to order. Instructions for joining our public meeting are on the screen here. They remain unchanged, so I won't go through them. Our first item of business is roll call. Lisa, can you call the roll for us, please?
I sure can. Stacy Anderson. Let's see. Stacy must not be here quite yet. Mirta Becerra.
Present.
John Contos.
Here.
Heather Harp. Looks like Heather must be out right at the moment. Jordan Hess.
Present.
Gwen Jones. Gwen must be absent today. Julie Merritt.
Present.
Jesse Ramos. This must be gone. Amber Sherrill. She's absent. Sandra Vazika.
Present.
And Brian Losberg. Brian is out, I believe. And Heidi West.
Present.
All right, so we have 6 members present. And that would be 6 members absent, so not a quorum.
Okay. So I think that we'll have a few people filtering in. So we'll take, we'll save any action items or any votes for later. But we can proceed. So we'll save the approval of the minutes. Is there any public comment on items that are not listed on the agenda? Seeing none, I think what we'll do is we'll just go through these and have informational presentations, and then we'll come back for we'll start with we'll take the items in the order listed, and we'll start with informational presentations. And the first one is a reappointment to the Tourism Business Improvement District, and the mayor is here. And Mayor Engen, I'll turn it over to you to present your appointment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning again, ladies and gentlemen. Asking your reappointment of Whitney Bergman to the Tourism Business Improvement District. As you may recall, that organization is provided for in statute. That district was established by hoteliers in collaboration with the destination Missoula quite a few years ago now. And board members by statute must be assessment payers in the organization. Ms. Bergman has served as chair of that board for some time. We meet semi-regularly. She is a very dialed in, competent human, good vision, and a good collaborator with the city of Missoula and the many folks involved in the industry. So I would hope that you would confirm her appointment, reappointment rather.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. For the record, Stacy Anderson and Heather Harp are both here, so we do have a quorum now. I'd entertain a motion on this item or any questions or comments. Julie.
I'm happy to make the recommended motion.
Thanks. The motion is in order. Is there public comment on the motion? Any committee discussion? Okay, we can have a roll call vote, please.
All right. Stacy Anderson.
Yes.
Mirta Becerra.
Yes.
John Contos.
Yes.
Heather Harp.
Yes.
Jordan Hess,
Yes.
Julie Merritt,
Yes.
Amber Sherrill,
Yes.
Sandra Vasica,
Yes.
and Heidi West.
Yes.
So that's unanimous for all in attendance.
Great. Thank you, Lisa. Our next item is an amendment to the emergency winter shelter operations contract. And we have Emily Armstrong here to present this item. Emily.
Hey there. Hey, Council. Thanks, Jordan. I am here to talk through an additional amount of funding that we are looking to add to the initial contract that we signed for or that was signed for the emergency winter shelter operations. The emergency winter shelter opened on November 1st, and staffing is a challenge given the current staffing situation nationally and in Missoula, and just given the ongoing challenging nature of the work that we are asking folks to do at the emergency winter shelter. So we are looking to get an approval for an amendment of $125,000 additional dollars in ARPA funding for staffing, recruitment, and retention. Looking really to bring more staff on site and then also to retain them throughout the season, which is a challenge every year, again, given the challenge of the work on site at the winter shelter. And Jesse from the Poverello Center is here to share a little bit more information about what they're looking at as far as the staffing reality and what the need is.
Thanks, Emily. Jesse?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for letting us join you once again and your ongoing support for our efforts to keep our most vulnerable neighbors in a warm, safe environment during these cold winter months. It's starting to get colder and colder. I saw some snow right here in the valley just a couple days ago, so we appreciate your partnership. Yes, so hiring became and has been a challenge. As you probably are aware, hiring across the city has been tough, and we are been working hard to create attractively compensated positions so that we can be hired up to full strength. Unfortunately, we're still not quite there. We've got about, I would say, a half to a third or 2/3 of the way there in terms of the number of staff we need to sustainably staff the shelter. And so these bonuses that we're going to be offering over the year through the winter season as a retention bonus are really important to help us hire staff on and keep staff on through the winter season. And then the larger bonus at the end is going to help kind of encourage people to stay throughout the whole season. The reason we're structuring these as a bonus as opposed to like just increasing the wages is just to acknowledge the fact that these are temporary extra funds to help support and kind of acknowledge the fact that it's really hard work to work at the shelter at any position for the winter season, and that and to help us make sure that we have the needed staff to sustainably staff both facilities all winter long. And that's all I have. I don't know if anybody has any questions or anything like that, but just again, really appreciate the community support we have on addressing this issue.
Great. Thank you, Jesse. I have a question from Julie Merritt.
I'd just like to go ahead and make the recommended motion and say that, thanks for Emily and for Jesse for being here and bringing this. That's obviously hiring has been difficult across all levels. So that I can sympathize with where you guys are at, and I hope that this will help get you fully staffed. Again, this is important for the safety of everyone involved, that we have the facilities appropriately staffed. So I hope this does it for you guys, and keep hoping that people will come fill those positions. Thanks.
Thank you, Julie. Marita?
I just want to voice my support for this, and I hope my fellow council members will too. This is really important work. We cannot tackle this issue without people working at the facilities. So I am fully supportive of it, and I hope that you will too.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm 100% supportive as well. And note that when we pay when we pay good wages to Missoulians, that money stays in the community, and so this is an investment in the emergency winter shelter program, as well as an investment in the people who will be staffing that and doing the good work at the Pavarella Center as well. So thanks for bringing this forward, and thanks for coming up with a solution to get the shelter open and operational. Would anyone from the public like to comment on this? Seeing none, and I don't see any other council hands raised, we can have a roll call vote.
All right. Stacy Anderson.
Yes.
Mirta Becerra.
Yes.
John Contos.
Yes.
Heather Harp.
Yes.
Jordan Hess.
Yes.
Julie Merritt.
Yes.
Amber Sherrill.
Yes.
Sandra Vasica.
Yes.
Heidi West.
Yes.
So that's unanimous for all in attendance.
Great. Thank you,
Thank
Lisa.
you all very much.
Thanks, Jesse, and thanks, Emily.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks.
So this item can go on our consent agenda. And our next item is informational only, but a really exciting update on the Scott Street property. And I have Dale Bickle and Ellen Buchanan here to provide a staff report, but we also have a team from Rivara here as well. So Dale, are you introducing this?
Thank you, Jordan. I'll just take a moment to just introduce our partners at GoodWorks and their consultants who are going to just provide an update on where we're at. You'll see some great conceptual design of the project. This is a similar presentation that was made at the MRA board a couple of weeks ago, and it's just wanted to do a status check-in and get the opportunity for council to answer any questions. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Dawn.
Hey y'all, thank you for hosting us today and being able to talk to you about where we are with the project. Before Todd shows his screen and shows where we are, I just want to let you know that basically we were challenged with, over the course of the summer, doing a massing project, figuring out where the buildings were going to go, what the open space was going to look like, how the buildings were going to sit on the land. I'm sure that once you see the drawings that Cushing Terrell has done for us, you're going to have lots of questions. And I'll just preface it by saying we don't have lots of answers at this point, because this really is just a massing project. We haven't gotten to architectural detail on the buildings themselves, but we're happy to answer any questions we can. We just might not be able to answer lots of them. There are still a number of pending issues we're trying to sort through as we work through the project. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Todd from Cushing Terrell. And just, I want to say first, thanks to the city for every single time we play a game over at the office called Development Whack-A-Mole. And it seems that like there's just issues that emerge and we have to figure out how to solve them. And the city has been great, super responsive partners in trying to help us solve the problems that emerge and trying to do a development that's complex. And I think Cushing Terrell, our partner, has really stepped to the plate and come up with a great design, but we'd like to show that to you now.
Thanks, Don. Thanks, everybody. I echo Don's sentiments too. It's been an exciting project as part of the community. And so I'm going to share my screen. You can view conceptual site layout. Thank you. So just give you some orientation. Scott Street's on the right-hand side, and we have Charlo and Palmer crossing east-west here. And some of the project goals that we I think have strived for is just listening to the community, keeping welcoming, opening, making sure we're addressing historical context, safety, traffic, parking, connectivity, open spaces between buildings. And this is part of that layout of what that might look like. So the site plan in general, the conceptual layout is we have the community land trust component is on this upper portion of the site, approximately 3 acres. And we have the mixed use and multifamily market rate component in about 6 acres on this lower portion of the site. Really wanted to focus again back on the community and listening to them about connectivity and creating a fabric, really keeping ingrained and engaged with the city and different components and desires and master planning components, thinking about how this will interact and impact our community in the future. So I can get more in detail on the site plan as we want to, just about zones and smart planning. I'll pause there a moment. Dawn, anything to add, or Kai?
No, I'm going to go back through this, Todd. Why don't you flip through the design, and then we'll put this one back up, and I'll talk to specifics about this design. Let's go ahead and first show the other slides first.
Okay. So this is just thinking about context. Down on the lower level, those are some past images of white sash pine, just what are some of our heritage. So this is standing, looking west into the development. You can see some of that community land trust, live work potential, and then a retail component just rising up. Just again, making sure we're being cognizant of the fabric. This is sitting in one of the courtyards, the landscaping, creating park-like settings, creating flow, vibrant community aspect, getting that neighborhood to filter into this as part of that. It's been there for a long time. So again, just thinking about historic context in our architecture as well. Another piece looking at the community land trust and really focusing on the architecture addressing the site, and the site addressing the architecture, creating those open spaces and availability for vibrancy is one of our key components.
And I think that's our last slide, right, Todd?
That's correct.
Could you flip it back to the first one that we did? And I'm just going to talk a little bit about the community land trust, that 3-acre portion to the north. We have 70 townhomes and condos situated in there, plus or minus a few units. I think it's going to be on the plus side. As Todd mentioned, the townhomes that face Scott Street, we're trying to design those as a live-work situation so that in addition to the retail that comes with the multifamily site, that people could have a barber shop or small office that faces Scott Street and has some commercial potential to sort of create a vibrant streetscape along Scott Street. Other things to mention, we've been working with North Missoula CDC to have them be the steward of the land trust, and we've been working with Trust Montana to hopefully contract with them to help us come up with the best rules and regulations that will govern all of these townhomes and condos. As I indicated at the MRA meeting, good rules make for good neighbors, so we're really cognizant of what we draft for sort of ongoing maintenance and all the things that go with a density development of this sort. Making sure that it stays good into the future is pretty high on our priority list. And then I'm going to let Kai Hochstetler from our team talk about the multifamily site, which you see in the middle.
Hi, I'm Kai Hochstetler from Rivara/Goodworks Development. One of the key things in the public meetings that came out as we were engaging with the community is this space, what is labeled on here as the central square, and having that be not just an asset to the apartments that exist around it, but really open space to the community to come in and engage on, and really having it flow through, as Todd was mentioning, both walking as well as community in the fabric. And one of the other pieces on the retail front there along Scott Street is looking at that being a food hall that has lots of different types of smaller restaurants in it. So, you can go there with your friends or with your family and everybody wants to eat something a little bit different. They can get it from this food hall situation, sit down together and share a meal, and everybody gets something a little bit different. The other portion of that, it's represented, just for clarification, Palmer right now looks more like a parking lot than a street. Those will most likely end up being angled parking so that it does act as a street in the future usage. One of the key pieces to being able to actually create that central square, as we've worked closely with the city staff on, is using, we plan to come back for a neighborhood character overlay that would allow us to use on-street parking counts for the apartments, as well as leveraging the potential shared parking to the south of Palmer there that Todd has the little hand on. If we couldn't do that, and if that NC overlay isn't approved, The central square and that park space will have to go away, and we'll have to change that out to be parking, which clearly nobody wants. And so we're really trying to think creatively to meet the demands, but also develop internal space that people want to stay on and participate in outdoor activities. To the right side of the central square, there's the daycare center, the childcare. That's slated to be between 5,500 and 6,500 square feet is what we're looking at right now. And then it's just right off the backside of that retail. And we, as well as the grocer, we're in conversations with an operator who would want to run a small neighborhood grocery store there. And so there's substantial amenities coming to the neighborhood through this development. And generally speaking, the neighborhood's communicated that they're concerned about traffic, be it all the different developments going on outside and around this, but also there's a general excitement around seeing amenities come to the neighborhood. And it's definitely a balancing act for us when we're in those conversations with them, as well as working with city staff on what the future plans are there to address traffic and the neighborhood concerns around the growing population.
So I think with that, we'll just pause and take questions from council if there are any.
Great. Well, thank you for the overview. This is all really exciting. I don't see any hands up right now, but would anyone like to ask any questions at this point? Stacy.
Thanks so much, Chair. And I guess, so I understand that this is a really sort of generalized layout, but have to say, love it so far. And with the community land trust portion, those, if I remember from the discussions when we originally entered into this deal, those will be a permanently affordable component, correct? If you could just talk a little bit just as a refresher on that portion, and as you kind of have called it out as separate from the lower portion, I think it's a good reminder for folks of kind of the long-term affordability component that is so exciting about this particular project.
Kai, why don't you take that one?
Yeah. So the way this is outlined in the LOI that you guys signed off on and that we all are signed off on is that there is a minimum of 70 units on the community land trust portion. Right now, the way it's envisioned, there's 42 townhomes and 36 condos. So we're actually, we have increased density beyond the target goal, but that comes in through using studios and one bedrooms and efficient use of space in the condos to house a different population that's going to live in a 2 or 3 story townhome. So we're trying to really create a diverse set of, living and housing options on this community land trust. So it's an integrated development, not just a housing product type for one person. The other portion of that is those are slated, the city has provided us with what affordable housing looks like. And the terms in the LOI is 100 to 120% AMI is what these homes need to be sold for. And so we're looking at there's the federal definition, right? As we all know, affordable housing, which is looking at the 60% AMI range as what, the city tasked us with, and the drafting of this LOI is really creating space for our working class in Missoula that can't afford to compete in this cash offer, no contingency environment. And that's that 100 to 120% AMI range.
So other things that go along with that is I talked about the rules we're writing. Some of the rules will include that none of these units can be used as an Airbnb for the whole unit. If you want to rent a bedroom, that's one thing, but no units will be able to be Airbnb-able. We'll try to keep some other restrictions on rentals because we really want people to live in these homes. There is an escalator rate that we are yet to be determined with the holder of the community land trust of how much those houses can escalate in the future, but there's a definitive cap on it for sure that keeps it affordable into the future. And we have been in preliminary conversations with Heather Harp about having a number of these units become Habitat for Humanity houses, that if we provide the shell, that they would do the inside for their clientele.
And can you repeat the number of units again? I missed that.
Yeah, the way it's envisioned currently is there's 42 townhomes and 36 condos.
Okay, thanks. Stacey, do you have additional questions? Okay, I have Julie next and then Heidi.
I just want to quickly say thank you guys for coming and giving us an update. I know it's been in the news that you're struggling with things getting thrown at you, the cost of materials and labor, and trying to keep this project within what was envisioned. So I appreciate all your hard work, and I just can't wait to see what comes out of this. Thanks a bunch.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was muted. Heidi and then Heather, please.
Thanks. So I had some questions about the town or the community land trust portion. As far as dividing it up for long-term maintenance, is each individual condo and townhouse development going to have its own HOA that's responsible for that long-term maintenance? Like how dialed in is that?
Yeah, that's one of those devils in the details where it would be great if we can just have one for everything, because that makes life easier. I doubt that legally we can do that between townhomes and condos. So it's likely we're going to have two, with the Uber rules coming from the holder of the land trust. So that's the detailed part we're still working out.
So you're in that sort of scenario, you would have all, just looking at this picture, like all 4 townhome structures be one HOA, and then all 4 condo structures being a second?
Yes, and that shared common space where those court areas and sort of ongoing maintenance, we're just going to have to figure out a formula or figure out how to do it. Obviously, we're using council and we're using the best forms and thinking of other community land trusts that have done stuff like this before. So we're not sure yet whether it's prohibited from doing the both. We just think there's going to be condo, 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 and then all the townhomes.
Okay.
Okay, next, Heather, please.
Thanks. I think one of the remarkable things about this particular project is how forward-thinking it has really evolved and becoming. I think what we've realized over the last 50 years is how our demographics of family sizes has really shifted from being very nuclear. Father, mother, 2 kids used to be the predominant housing or household type. And now that is a much smaller percentage of today's households. And I think this particular massing design really kind of speaks to how things have really shifted, where single people are now the largest demographic. And to be able to have townhomes and condos in particular, even the apartments that cater to that particular niche, and it's no longer just a niche, it's the #1 demographic, really kind of speaks to how a lot of folks have really reprioritized what is important to them. And I think what this illustrates is that people want the density, but not necessarily the headaches of having to maintain their own piece of property, but still be able to enjoy a mutually beneficial central square kind of design that you can just walk out your back door and be able to be in a shared space and be able to do it in a really wonderful way. So I just want to commend you on this massing design so far today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Heather. Amber.
Yeah, I don't have any questions. I just wanted to say quickly, I think this looks great. I'm excited about this. I think it's going to be a real benefit for the neighborhood too, with some of the retail there. But I love the central square. I love, just the idea that is it 5 minutes or 10-minute walk to the park that they've been working on nationally, that this is just a close place for all the kids and people to get outside. This is a really nice design.
I wonder if you could talk a little bit from a process standpoint about your community engagement. I know you've done a lot of neighborhood engagement, and there's been a lot that's informed this design. Can you just talk a little bit about that process and kind of the big lessons learned and whatnot?
Sure, I really have to give kudos to Northside Westside crew. They've been our partners with respect to this. That when we first started thinking about this project, we sat down and met with early crew leaders and just really wanted to make sure that we were all at the table together and that we were listening to the neighborhood. So what we did was we had a couple of design charrette ideas where a small subset of the community was incorporated in those first initial things in July, where we sat down with architects and we kind of looked at historical photos and figured out what kind of look feel we wanted to have for that. But then we had a meeting in early August, I think it was, that was in person at Burn Street Bistro. So it was in the community and was, according to the city, one of the better attended meetings anyone's ever seen. I think there were some 70 community members there in addition to our team. And we just really heard, was a listening session for us. We just really heard, we want this to be a place that's accessible to the whole community, that it feels seamless, connected with the north side, that we have these traffic concerns, that we want it to be a place that feels welcoming, that we want a place for coffee. We'd really like a place to gather and have a beverage, adult beverage together. Can you please make all those things happen? And so we took that back and worked with the Cushing team and really came up with a design that we feel super proud of. I mean, I am just hopeful that we're going to get to the right place on parking and all the little rules under Title 20 that is part of the development whack-a-mole I referenced earlier, to be able to keep this open space that we have. We've gotten some kudos from some architects that have looked at it and said, you know, we think every project should have a central square like this. And so we're hopeful that that central square can stay in place due to building constraints of cost of cement and doing underground parking. It may not be able to be. This is our highest, best aspiration, and we'll do our darndest to try to get there. It's really important to everybody. And so once we put the sort of, you know, or Cushing actually put this together for us, we went back out to the community and we said, here's what we came up with. What do you think? And that meeting was a Zoom meeting. Unfortunately, it wasn't in person because the COVID cases were escalating. And we heard back from the community that they were pretty happy with what we came up with, and that they just really want to see that central square stay if at all possible, and that they really want to make sure that their parking mitigation concerns get addressed by the city.
Thank you. Heidi?
I guess I'll echo a comment I made during that last public meeting where this maybe a very similar design was showed. If I remember correctly, this childcare facility has quite a bit of capacity, and I think with this design, it's a little unclear what the traffic pattern is for pickup and drop off. And I take my kid to school to deliver his base twice a week, and pick up and drop off is a challenge. And that's with, you know, a pull out loop where you can pull your vehicle in. So I guess I was wondering if someone could speak to what the proposed traffic flow is for those kind of peak times, because I'm not seeing an area that is specifically accommodating that traffic flow.
Kai, you want that one or should I do it?
Go for it.
So right now where the childcare is located, it's very close to the retail, and I share your concerns, Heidi. Our development partners on this are Interurban Design. They have a level of keenness that they don't want to see the childcare way off to the back. My preference, quite honestly, is to put it on that back apartment loop, where it's away from the rest of the retail. And I think that as we go forward with getting more concrete about how all this actually gets built out and WGM weighing in on the traffic perspective of that, my hope is that we might swing that childcare to a different corner, because I do agree with you that it's difficult here. And I understand their desire to be able to have moms pick up their kid and get a cup of coffee at the same time, and groceries.
And to follow up, you know, if a child care, for example, were to offer transportation, like Head Start does, for example, they have buses, maybe considering where some bus parking could be is also an option, that would alleviate those, you know, those daily commutes into this space, but there would have to be a space for it. So
thank you for reminding us of that.
Yeah, and along those lines, I think having the childcare be proximate to Mountain Line Transit, I think is really important. And
we're hopeful Mountain Line's going to move in this neighborhood very close to this, and we're hopeful we're going to get a lot more bus stops as a result of that. That's going to take care of some of the traffic issue, but I hear you loud and clear, Mr. Chair.
And that's actually a good segue maybe to a question that I had about maybe Jeremy or someone from the city could weigh in on how this fits in with the Public Works Master Plan and some of the other activity in this area. And I guess specifically, I'm looking at that potential shared parking to the south and wondering what else needs to fall into place in order for that to happen.
Hi, Jeremy Keane, Director for Public Works and Mobility. Yeah, we're playing a different game of development whack-a-mole. I describe it more as a puzzle, but we are working together with the Rivara team to identify how our Public Works facility and how a Mountain Line facility might fit into this area as well. We have the rest of this property, which is the other 9 acres that the city purchased that was part of that original White Pine and Sash site. We have our city shop site that's already located there just to the south, and the White Pine Park area. So there's some other pieces here that we're still working through to figure out how it might all fit. And getting Mountain Line into that picture is one of the challenges in terms of figuring out how all that space gets allocated. So I also don't have concrete answers on that yet, other than to say we're working on it. We're continuing to revise our space needs plan for Public Works. And I've been meeting probably bi-weekly with Mountain Line folks on how we can accommodate those different space needs together with them. So progress, but no concrete answers yet.
Sure, thanks, that's helpful. Mirta.
I apologize if you already covered this or maybe I missed it, but I'm wondering about the zoning and whether this is it a special district or a PUD? Like, what is the zoning for the entire proposal?
So the land use strategy that we've spent substantial time, working with the city on, it's currently zoned. I don't recall the actual zoning classification for it, but it is currently zoned appropriate for the apartments and mixed use portion. The question is, we are evaluating, do we come back for a up zone that would give us 15 extra feet of height for those buildings? We don't know if that's something that's required yet. We do know that the NC overlay is required to address the parking portion. As far as the community land trust goes, with some recent changes at the state legislative level, Montana Code Annotated was adjusted that we were working with the city and we came up with a substantially creative structure based on state statute that we can use for the community land trust portion. Someone else can call it, I believe it's the multi-dwelling codes that we're using. But it's been definitely processed from a land use perspective, and we came to a fairly elegant solution across the board.
Caitlin, do you want to add to that?
Hi, yeah, it's zoned M1R-2 currently. And the proposal for the market rate parcel, if an upzone were to be requested to increase the height, it would just be to M1R-3, which is consistent with the growth policy. And then that NC overlay to think about parking as well.
Thanks.
Thanks, Caitlin.
Thanks.
Mirta, do you have any other questions? Okay. And Caitlin, I don't know if you had anything else to add, if I can take your hand out. Okay, great.
No, I forgot to click lower hand, sorry.
No problem, thanks. Well, and I appreciate all the complexity in this, and we really appreciate your work to navigate that. All of the easy development in this valley is done, and so we're gonna need to continue to be creative and innovative, and this is both. So that's great. I do have a public comment. Matt Larson, you should be able to unmute.
Yeah, I'm wondering, is there going to be use of this cash in lieu of parklands stuff? And what is the, like, if you look at the north side as a whole, it's lacking in parks dramatically from other areas. And so I'm just wondering how we're really addressing that, and also why would we add the extra zoning, the extra 15 feet in that area, when basically like developers are copying single family homes and redeveloping it into four unit condo buildings, and that's strapping down the tax basis of one of the lower income neighborhoods of the city traditionally. So I'm just wondering why we're going to strap down even more tax basis for this development if it's just for parking. It just seems like not really in line with the values of the city when it comes to trying to go towards public transit and walkable, community living scenarios. And we're not funding the roads, and we're kind of like funneling all this traffic to Reserve Street. Why are we picking this neighborhood to add all this extra parking in when, we should be kind of taking care of this neighborhood and not pushing people away with all of this extra development? It's increasing people's taxes dramatically. I talked to somebody yesterday who's lived here for 15 years. Their taxes started at $1,800 a month. They're now at $4,800 per month. So it's ridiculous to try and get affordable housing here when you're just, building and building up further and further when it's kind of superfluous. The parking shouldn't be an issue here because you should have public transit that's adequate.
Thanks for the comments. I'm going to go ahead and request that we get answers to a few of those. First of all, there's the question around parks, and I don't know if we have anyone from parks here, but maybe we have someone who can talk to the parks master plan or how this fits into our community's parks goals. If not, maybe we can get an answer on that. Dale, do you want to weigh in on that?
I can jump in on that. So we certainly have an acknowledgement that this area is underparked. I think one thing about this site, the specific design of this particular site, is that central square portion is a great amenity that would be intended to be open to the public here. But that's just the design here. What we're working on is making sure we have adequate parkland as this continues to develop. We are working on alternatives to the north. We do control the land to the north where our current public works operations are and inventory storage. That's a potential site. And we're also working with other sites in the direct area currently to make sure we are getting the neighborhood adequately parked.
And I guess I'd highlight that we have recently have a long-term lease on the Northside Park land that furthers that goal of improving park access. Not to mention the recent Land and Water Conservation Fund money going toward Westside Park. So it's something that it's certainly acknowledged in city plans that this area is park deficient, and there's a lot of good work going on around that. Caitlin, can you talk a little bit about how parking minimums or how parking requirements are set?
Yeah, so with the project, just to clarify, the NC overlay and the parking issue is because Title 20 requires X amount of parking per business, per dwelling unit, things like that. And so in order to preserve that open space in the central square, that's why we're considering the NC overlay or some alternate solutions. So the project isn't a big parking lot, because we've got those Title 20 ordinances and they have to meet them with the required amount of parking. And so that's what we're thinking with that. So it's more of an encouragement to preserve that open space, especially smarter use of the land on the project area, like that central square, as opposed to adding more parking than is required. That's not what we're doing. And then for the rezone, building up, it's the same goal, right? It's to increase density, and then it's to build up as opposed to out to get that density, which then saves land to be used for open space. Again, the example of that great central square that we've got. Does that make sense?
That's helpful, Caitlin. Thank you.
Great.
Are there any additional questions or comments on this item? We do have 3 other agenda items that we need to move on to here shortly.
I have a couple things I'd like to throw out there.
Sure.
Matt, I'd encourage you to go to engagemissoula.com/scott-street.development. On there are 2 different PDFs created by the Park Department, White Pine Potential Option A, as well as White Pine Potential Option B, that you can see that are being evaluated by the Parks Department for larger open space and what meets, my understanding, is a regional parkland requirement set forth by the city. And then by going up, we do get that density, which also helps create additional tax base because of the additional units, thus funding services like the park and the area that will be built and everything else that's out there. The central square space is going to be maintained by the development. That doesn't become a liability to the Parks Department the way it's currently contemplated.
Thanks. Okay, any additional questions or comments from committee members? All right. Well, again, I want to commend you for navigating a challenging project. It's a complicated project, and it's exciting to see the progress. And we look forward to next steps.
Thanks for allowing us to present to you. We will definitely be back to show you more pictures.
That sounds great. Thank you all. Okay, our next item is item 3.4. This is an ordinance amending Missoula Municipal Code, Title 2, Chapter 2.82 on residency requirements. And I'm going to turn this over. I think we have Angela Simonson from HR and Dale Bickle here, and I'm not sure who's introducing this, so I'll let either one of you jump in.
Dale, I will take it unless you'd like to say something before I share my screen.
Go right ahead, Angela.
Okay.
I think the presentation speaks for itself.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me today and giving me the time to share this important information with all of you. I'll get my presentation pulled up here. I want to provide you with some information related to identified risks around this particular ordinance. And before I do that, it's important to share some information about the history of how this ordinance came to be. If I'm not mistaken, the council members that are present today were not part of the decision in 2013. I apologize, the screen does not want to work for me here. There we go. So this ordinance was passed in 2013. And in my research, I reviewed minutes from that council meetings leading up to the passage. And in those meeting minutes, the council person who brought this forward really focused on the fact that the interest was based on other Montana cities considering the same action. I've reached out to my colleagues in all major Montana cities, and as of November 2021, none of them have such requirements. A few of them had attempted to pass such ordinance, and those failed. Others had residence requirements in place for short periods of time, but they no longer have that, nor are any of them working towards reinstating that. One comment that was found in the minutes related to this particular ordinance was that it just, and I quote, "it just requires that the people that create and enforce city policy actually live under that city policy." Two things that stand out are that city council is the primary policy-making body, and the involvement in creation of policy and procedures by staff is always to be done in the best interest of the organization and community, and not in the best interest of the employee. And I believe that dedicated public servants understand this need to be selfless. And a final note on the history is that this particular ordinance did grandfather in existing staff holding these positions and all staff hired prior to the ordinance passing. And when we review this, there are some identified risks that I need to share with you. First and foremost is the risk related to recruitment. We've already heard in today's presentations about how difficult recruitment is in general. And when we look at director level positions, that difficulty increases. In recent director level positions, we've had 4 in the last 2 years, 1 last year, 3 in the current year. 3 of those 4 candidates expressed concerns over this particular residence requirement. 1 has even shared that he almost did not accept the position out of a desire to perhaps not live within city limits. We also need to expect that we will have retirements and other turnover in the future. And we must be able to attract the best talent possible for these positions. That leads me to being able to also attract internal talent, and that is retention. And so for the purposes of succession planning and promotional opportunities, this particular ordinance creates risk around that. We have current qualified staff, 2 that I'm thinking of. 1 holds an assistant chief position, another holds a deputy director position, who do not live within city limits, nor were they employed prior to the time this ordinance came into effect, and neither one would be eligible to apply for the director position if that opportunity were to present itself. The third issue is when we look at this particular ordinance through the diversity lens, we are failing to include and encourage all values and lifestyles in our upper management level positions. Essentially, we're pitting family, or this ordinance is pitting family and lifestyle values and choices against career choices. Individuals choose to live rural lifestyles, and we ought not to put limits around that when we're looking at our director level positions. The fourth issue is that the position list is not accurate. We've had turnover and reorganizations as a result of that, and yet the ordinance list of positions has not kept up with those changes. The prior council, from my research, did not appear to have justifiable reasoning for residence requirements, at least not as they align with other common residency requirement arguments. The International City County Manager Association, known as ICMA, compiled a report in 2017 for arguments for and against residency requirements at director level positions. So it's important that I point out, we are not talking about first responder residency requirements. We are only talking about department head and supervisory management level requirements. The top 3 common arguments for residency requirements in these positions are commitment to the position, understanding of the issues in the community, and response times. When we break each of these down, there is no research, what ICMA shared as well as additional research that I've done on my own. There is not a nexus between commitment to the position and residency. In fact, we have many employees who are currently holding these positions that are in the current ordinance who are grandfathered in, and they continue to live outside city limits, yet they continue to remain as committed as ever to the city. The second issue of understanding the issues present in the community, again, there's not a nexus to comprehension of issues and residency. Top level personnel in these types of positions need to be professionals committed to doing their absolute best to improve the lives of those they serve, and they do. There's argument that public servants at this level are giving 110% of what they have to better the communities in which they serve. And the final argument is response times. That holds true in some cases for first responders, but department heads do not respond to emergencies. So all of these arguments that are commonly found, while the prior council did not necessarily bring these into play when they created this ordinance, they're common arguments for residency requirements. They are all truly management issues and not residency issues. The mayor and Dale both have tools to manage these issues should they ever occur among these department heads. And so that is why we are here today to recommend revisions to the particular ordinance. We are hoping that, and I believe that the revised recommended revisions were submitted for today's committee. We are proposing that this ordinance only includes senior leadership team positions that report to the mayor's office. Those positions are listed on the screen before you. This change would remove positions like MRA on the Parking Commission who report to boards and do not report to the mayor. And the changes would also remove staff level positions. In addition to the changing of the titles that are found in this particular ordinance, we're also recommending, rather than living within the city limit, because as we can see, there is no nexus to commitment or ability to do the job with residency, but we still do value the importance of having a physical connection to the city of Missoula, while also giving those individuals more choice in regards to their lifestyle and values. And for that reason, we would require a primary residence to be within a 45-minute drive of city limits. This also sets the expectation of a reasonable response time should a last-minute meeting or a disaster occur. And so I'm here today to ask that the committee set a public hearing for the November 29th meeting and preliminarily adopt an ordinance to amend the Missoula Municipal Code Chapter 2.82 entitled Establishment of Continuous Residence Requirements for City Senior Leadership Team. Dale, did you have anything to add to what I've already shared?
I don't. Well, thank you, Angela. You know, and really the biggest impetus from staff bringing this forward is that internal equity issue where we have these positions where we are trying to create career ladders and the ability to grow our future leaders, and simply we have specific situations today where individuals aren't actually eligible to apply for this position unless they are willing to move their families into the city limits.
And to clarify that, we have situations where, say, for example, two deputy directors have inequities as far as one would be eligible and one wouldn't, and we have a lot of situations where employees that are lateral to one another are treated differently under the existing ordinance. Is that fair?
Yeah. So we have an example. Yeah, we have an example of two deputy directors. Both of them happen to live outside the city limits. One is grandfathered in, the other isn't. It's just those types of scenarios we have.
Mm-hmm. I have a question about, I think that coming from the place of, the intent of the ordinance, and of course, none of the existing council was on the council at the time, but it appears as though there was some intention around value-based, around maybe living in the city, conferring certain values upon a person or something like that. And I wonder if you can talk about how that's more of a management, I guess. How would you get at those values in selecting a candidate? If suppose you're hiring a department head that is responsible for zoning or urban form or something along those lines. How would you get at those values through recruitment, through interview, and how would that be more effective than the residency requirement?
So Jordan, those are like skill-based and competency-based questions rather than a residency is what my argument would be from an HR standpoint. And so we would need to build in important points into the recruitment about commitment to the city efforts, aligning their proposals with strategic plans and other goals that we'd find throughout the city. And then we would build in questions similar to that during the interview process. And I guess it does boil back to the management issue that if we ever had a director who is failing to follow those values that we hold dear within the organization for our leadership, that the mayor and Dale would need to take action for correction around that. To my knowledge, we have not recently, or currently, I should say, with our current leadership, we haven't run into that, but we could, and the mayor and Dale they would be dealing with that even if we had a residency requirement. It's just a more powerful tool to remedy those issues rather than your address. I don't know if that answered your question.
No, that's really helpful. And
Okay.
that was exactly what I was getting at, I guess, is that there's management tools and I mean, you don't have to look very far to see that there's a diversity of views and values living within the city, and that that residency requirement doesn't naturally create those views and values. So I've got Amber, and then Heidi, and then Julie on the queue.
Yeah, thanks. I have to admit that I didn't even know that we had this requirement until this came up for amendment. So, and honestly, it doesn't make any sense to me because City Council is a policy setting body, and we live in our city and in our ward. So it also doesn't make sense to me in a difficult job market that we have that requirement. So, and I appreciate that what Angela and Dale both pointed out is the difficulty in succession planning. So I appreciate that aspect of it as well. I guess my one comment, question, or just observation is, if we're going to limit where they live in any way, if we're doing it by minutes, that seems like a funny, how fast can you drive kind of thing. So I'm just curious about why we chose minutes instead of, a circumference around the city boundaries or something.
Thank you. The discussion with senior leadership team around minutes versus miles, or should we even repeal it altogether, right? That was also a consideration, really boiled down to aligning it with our first responder response time ordinance. And so we have you must be able to get to City Hall or to the station in this amount of time. And we felt that if we were going to put parameters around it, it felt more equitable to align it that way.
Thank you for that clarification. That makes sense.
Thanks. Heidi, and then Julie.
Jordan, can I?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Heidi, and then Julie.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and make the recommended motion if it's appropriate.
Yep, that motion is in order.
Okay, and then just briefly, I just like to make a comment. I think that this is, I think it was a very well-intended ordinance that's had some very unforeseen consequences. And I think one thing that's also important to remember, aside from the equity internally around who can get promoted and can't, I think you're also prescribing the lifestyle not just for the employee, but the whole family, which I think is also a really interesting effect, because you're not just saying that this whole, the one person has to live in city limit, it also has to be the wife or, the partner and the children, and that prescribes a certain lifestyle that, not everyone might want. And so I think that the 45-minute, zone allows people a lot more choices on where to live and how they want to live their lives. And I support this change.
Thanks. Julie?
Thanks. I also support this. I think that I don't know that it necessarily, the residency requirement necessarily rises to the legal level of discrimination, but I think it certainly borders on both housing and employment discrimination. And that just isn't acceptable. I really appreciate the thought that's gone into this. I would have been tempted to just scrap it all together, but I think the 45-minute response time for those senior leadership positions makes some sense. I can kind of understand what the previous thinking was about this. It's one of those ideas that sounds good when you say it fast, but in practice, it doesn't work. So I'm definitely in support of these revisions.
Thanks. So we have a motion on the floor to set a public hearing on November 29th. Is there any public comment on the motion? Mr. Larson.
Yes, Matt Larson, Ward 3. Thank you for allowing me to speak again. I would suggest voting against this. It's kind of ridiculous putting the time requirement on it. Again, we're within 45, 50 minutes from, you know, Ravalli County. So this adds to just kind of the plutocratic kind of lunacy that we've seen the mayor and the mayor's majority engage in. Just last year, I was forced to change my voter registration so that I could ask questions to the city council. Me, little old me here as a common citizen, has to go through all these hoops to engage in these quote unquote open meetings. But senior officials who make like 90,000 plus a year can live wherever they want, and it doesn't matter. And we can be taxed as citizens and, you know, not tax the senior plutocratic officials that are, you know, planning their succession right now. So I thank you all and applaud you all who vote against this or to reevaluate this, because this is just utter lunacy and a plutocratic, like, you know, circus.
Thanks. I don't see any additional public comment. Anyone else from the committee? Mirta.
I fully support this. I think that given our current housing affordability issue, it's important to provide as many choices for people to be able to work for the city and live where it's most suitable for them and their family. I think that what's really important is to ensure that whoever works for the city has a finger on the pulse of the community and has a strong connection to the city and the community and the people that they're working for. And so I would really encourage us to look at ways to ensure that we're getting at that during the hiring process. I know there are some cities in California, for example, where management is required to participate a certain number of hours a month, I believe, in any public engagement for projects that are taking place under their purview. So, you know, I'm not suggesting that we make that a requirement, but I think it's interesting to think of different ways in which we can get to the same goal, which is, you know, to keep the people who work for the city well engaged in the community that they serve. But I'm fully supportive of this, removing this requirement right now. Thank you.
Thanks for the comments. I see no further comments, so we can have a roll call vote on setting the public hearing.
All right. Stacy Anderson.
Yes.
Mirta Becerra.
Yes.
John Contos.
Yes.
Heather Harp.
Yes.
Jordan Hess.
Yes.
Julie Merritt.
Yes.
Amber Sherrill.
Yes.
Sandra Vasica.
Yes.
Heidi West.
Yes.
That's unanimous for all in attendance.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. That can go on our consent agenda. And we'll move on to item 3.5. This is a resolution relating to $397,000 stormwater system revenue bond, DNRC Water Pollution Control State Revolving Loan Program. And we have Lee Griffin here to introduce the item.
Hi, thank you. Lee Griffin, City Finance. I'll share my screen briefly to pull up the referral and resolution that I'm bringing to City Council today. As Mr. Hess stated, this is I'm bringing to City Council a resolution relating to a $397,000 stormwater system revenue bond that we would be issuing with the state revolving fund. These are excellent financing options for the city. This comes in at 2.5%, and this bond would be covering the Terrace Park infill and related improvements the stormwater utility is taking on right now. And it's a short presentation. I'm here for any questions.
Thanks, Lee. Are there any questions or comments or a motion from committee members? Julie.
I'm happy to make the recommended motion.
Thank you. Motion is in order. Any discussion? Seeing none, public comment, Mr. Larson.
Yeah, I'm just wondering about all the construction at Karis Park. How does this have to do with wastewater at all? And why are we diverting funds to Karis Park? Thank you.
Thanks for the comment. Julie, do you have another comment? Okay. Okay. We'll have a roll call vote on this item, please.
Stacy Anderson,
Yes.
Mirta Becerra,
Yes.
John Contos,
Yes.
Heather Harp,
Yes.
Jordan Hess,
Yes.
Julie Merritt,
Yes.
Amber Sherrill,
Yes.
Sandra Vasica,
Yes.
and Heidi West.
Yes.
So that's unanimous for all in attendance.
Thanks. We'll go ahead and put that on the consent agenda as well. And we can move on to item 3.6, which is our stop loss insurance policy. I'll turn it over to Dale Bickle for the staff report.
Good afternoon. This is the final one that you've all been waiting for. This is our annual stop loss renewal on our health insurance plan. The city is self-insured, but in order to mitigate our risk, we do buy insurance on ourselves. The easiest way to think about this is that we have a $160,000 deductible on our health plan. To the extent we have claims hit that, our insurance company then starts helping us cover those costs. We did, our third-party administrator, Allegiance, did a request for proposals for a stop-loss carrier. Our current carrier was the low bid that was included with the package. On that, it showed a 14.9% increase in option one. Just want to be clear that that is a 14.9% increase over our current policy, which was for that short period of a 6-month period. As we change our plan year, aligning it to the calendar year rather than the fiscal year. So this premium period that we're talking about today is from January 1 through December 31. And so the actual increase on an annual basis is 3%. And I'm happy to answer any questions related to that.
Thank you, Dale. Any questions or comments or a motion from committee members? Stacy.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I sit on the health insurance plan as represented from council, and so I'm happy to make the recommended motion to approve this.
Thank you. The motion is in order. Additional discussion? And public comment, Mr. Larson.
Yeah, I just wanted to see if anybody could explain like the different multi-million-dollar breakdowns for this stop loss insurance stuff. It just seems like these are way larger numbers than the $150 some odd thousand that's the deductible every year. So just wondering if there could be any clarity on that.
Thank you. So this is not a back and forth. I do recognize that this is that this insurance document that's attached is complex. Dale, I'll turn it over to you if you want to add anything for additional benefit of the committee or any members of the public who might be tuning in on the policy itself.
So if you can see my screen, I can make it a little bigger. And what I'll talk about, I mean, this shows the limits of the coverage the city is receiving. This is the $160,000 individual I guess deductible call it free, so anytime we have an individual exceed $160,000, this policy kicks in. What the cost of the plan is the bottom number. Estimated annual cost. This is the premium is $882,000. Our 6-month premium was $767,000 for this for that 6-month period. And because of that short period, it's an odd. It's hard for carriers to adjust, so that's why it's only a 14% increase from that. But like I said earlier, it's a 3% increase from our last 12-month premium period. So this is included in our budget, and so we have this is just to approve the contract.
Thanks, Dale. Are there any additional questions or comments from council? Seeing none, we have a motion on the floor from Ms. Anderson, and we can have a roll call vote on the motion.
Stacey Anderson.
Yes.
Mirta Becerra.
Yes.
John Contos.
Yes.
Heather Harp.
Yes.
Jordan Hess.
Yes.
Julie Merritt.
Yes.
Amber Sherrill.
Yes.
Sandra Vasica.
Yes.
Heidi West.
Yes.
So that's unanimous for all in attendance.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. That can also go on our consent agenda. We have no further business. We do need to return to approve our minutes from October 27th. Are there any changes to those minutes? Okay, seeing none, those will be approved and we will be adjourned. Thanks, everyone.